What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Last week we got the ability to build our engine and run it from a jar and import assets that are inside of our jar. Now this week we are going to make importing not static anymore. Everything will be dynamic. So no more statically writing in our script to load anything. All we have to do is just put it in our folder, refresh it, and then run it. And another thing that we're going to do that I did not mention because, well, I didn't even think about it until just now, that we did not do our rotation. And so we're going to go ahead and do that as well and replace adding the project panel for now. And we'll do that next episode. So we can just go ahead and get rotation and go ahead and throw anchor in there as well. Because I did say that we were going to do that and I never got around to it because I forgot. So I did change my color class just to show you guys. I just made these variables instead of returning a function, and it just returns a final color. That's it. I didn't want to add that and not tell you guys. So here's the color class. So I guess we can go ahead and get into this. So inside of the gameObject class, we need another variable. And this variable is going to be called dirty. And for those of you who don't know what dirty is, it means that something has changed. So we're going to say private byte dirty equals, will equal 1. So 1 is true, 0 is false, if you have not gotten that yet. So we're going to go ahead and start out as dirty being true. So our matrix needs to change. Down here, we already have most of it programmed. All we're going to do is just change a few variables. We're just going to change the dirty and then make it change the transformation matrix, which we will also need that as well. Make it private for now. Private matrix for x4 matrix equals new matrix for x4. And yes, we can use matrix 3s, but since in the shader we're using 4x4 matrices, it's just easier for us to use a 4x4 matrix for the model matrix or transformation matrix, whatever you want to call it. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. So down here we need a method that will allow us to check to see if it is dirty. So we're going to say public final boolean is dirty, and then all this is going to do is going to return dirty equals 1. So if dirty equals 1, then it is it's going to return true. Else this is going to return false. So another method that we need to do is the update matrix method. So I'm going to do public void update matrix. And what this is going to do is it's going to call a method in the matrix class. So it's going to say matrix dot set transformation. And then we're going to pass in position and rotation. And we're not going to have scale in here. We're going to pass scale to the shader. And I don't know if you remember or watched the video of me showing off the additions or whatever that we're doing this month, but I was having issues with scale. And it was because I was passing it straight into the matrix instead of multiplying it by the pixel scale and then multiplying all that by the transformation matrix. And that's where I was having an issue. I was trying to do it straight into the matrix and it was screwing the scale up. All right, now our next method is the ability to get the matrix. So it's going to be a final matrix for x4. Just call it matrix. And all it's going to do is just return matrix. And that's it. And whenever we change the position, what we need to do is set dirty equals 1. Unreachable code. Oh. Duh. Turn position. Let's see here. How can I do that? Oh, because it's whenever I'm setting it, not whenever I'm getting it. Dirty equals 1 right there. We also need to do the same thing if we change the scale or the rotation. So we'll set dirty equals 1. And that's it for the gameObject class, at least. Now we need to go into the matrix class. And now we need to add the set transformation method. So it's going to be extremely simple. It's not going to be anything crazy, and we're only going to be setting the information that we're actually going to use. We're not going to set all the values, and a lot of places set all these values, but we do not want that because, well, our matrices, all of those are going to be zeros all the time. It should never change. So there's no reason to mess with those. So the first thing we need to do in this method is we need to get the radians of the rotation. So it's going to be math dot 2 radians, and we're going to pass in r. And yeah, it doesn't need that. And that's going to cache it to radians because we're using our rotation all the way up to 360. Well, we're using radians, and radians isn't the same as angles. All right, so now we need the cosine. So float cos equals float math dot cos, and then pass in radians. The next thing is the sine. Float math dot sine, and then pass in radians. That's simple enough, right? So the values that we're going to be changing in this matrix is m0, 0. It's going to be equal to cos. M 0, or that's not 0. M0, 1. Come on. 1 is going to be equal to sine, and M1, 1 is going, or what am I doing? Not 1, 1. 0, and we need the third one, is going to be equal to P dot X. And that's it for the first row. So M, sorry, I'm like chicken pecking today. M1, 0 equals negative sine M1 and 1 is going to be equal to cos, and M1, 3 is going to be equal to P dot Y. And normally when you look up transformation matrices, they've got the inversion over here. So it'd be negative sine and then sine over here. Well, we want to rotate clockwise. So that's why I switched the negative sign from here to over here. It's because I want it to rotate clockwise, not counterclockwise. And guess what? That is it for the transformation. Oh, you probably caught that, didn't you? Put that in the wrong place here. Dirty equals 1. Right, now we need to go into the, not the renderer, but the sprite renderer is where we put it. Now we need to set some values. So, right up here, we need to say, actually, yeah, we could put it right under here. We're going to go public vector2 anchor. We'll go ahead and put the anchor in there as well at the same time, because we're going to use a completely different shader. We're going to make another shader for this. So right here we're going to say sprite dot material dot shader dot set uniform, and the uniform name is going to be anchor, and we're going to say anchor. I know we don't have this yet, but we will in just a second. Create method in here. Of course, I don't want it all the way in there, and I'm not going to use a completely different set. We're going to just set it right here. Say public void set uniform string name and vector2v. And then this is just gonna call set uniform name v.x v.y. And that's because the reason why we're just adding this instead of just continuing to use this is because we're going to be passing in a lot of vectors in the future, so we need a kind of helper. That way we don't have to set all that stuff all the time. All right, next thing is you need to check if gameObject dot is dirty. So if it's dirty, we need to update the matrix. So we need to call gameObject dot update matrix. And then right here, we're just going to set that matrix. Oops. Set that matrix into the variable. Set uniform. And we'll just call this transformation matrix. And then right here, we're going to pass in gameObject.matrix. Alright, so I don't think... Oh, yeah, I did forget something. We need a... another shader. Alright, let me open this up because my computer's slow, so give me just 1 second and I will do that. Okay, so I just copied this shader and then I pasted it and called it default game shader because this will be the default shader for our in-game stuff. So we need a uniform map for transformation matrix. And then we need a uniform vector to anchor. And then we need a uniform vector to let's say object scale. I would call it unit scale, but later we will be using actual unit scales, like to change units from pixels to, say, meters or whatever. So we'll just do that. So right here, we will say vec 4, not 3, world position. And this is just where we're going to do our calculations at. Is going to equal vec 4, and put these in here, position minus anchor. And that's just going to offset our vertices. So that way 1, 1 is the top right corner. 1, 0 is the bottom right. 0, 1 is the top left, and so on, regardless of the scale. So we could scale it up 100 times, and it'll just be massive, but the anchor will always be in the corner that you're wanting it to be, just by setting it to 0 or 1, or the center by putting 0.5, 0.5, and so on. So we're going to say position minus anchor, and then we're going to multiply that by pixel scale times object scale 0, 1, and then that is our scaling of the vertices. So after we scale it, we've already done the position and the rotation matrices. So then all we have to do is multiply that by transformation matrix. And that will give us our world position. So then after that, we're going to do our positioning. So we're going to take projection and multiply it by world position. And that will give us, or put everything in the proper spot. All right, so that's it for there. Now we need to pass in, forgot this, sprite dot material dot shader dot set uniform, call it object scale, and it's going to be game object dot scale. Right, that is what I called that, right? Pretty sure. Okay. Lowercase o, capital S. Gotcha. All right, this should work, I think. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Okay, so if we run that, we're currently setting down here, we got a scale of 2. So let's scale this by 4. All right, scaling is working. 4. Let's change the anchor. Let's say 0.5. And that did not do anything. Neither did that. All right, give me just 1 minute and I'll look and see what's going on. Okay, there's a couple things. Sorry that took so long. I mean, you're not going to tell the difference, but... All right, in here we need to remove the scale stuff. So wherever it says like time scale, we need to remove that. So it'll say like that right there. We can remove this scale stuff here, scale stuff there. Yeah, so I completely figured out my issue with the scaling in the matrix, what was going on, and that's exactly what it was. Also, right here we need to put new shader, default game shader, and change the material name that we're importing to default game instead of default material or test material or whatever that is. Because what it was doing was it was trying to find a test material that had a completely different shader on it. So then you want to uh, go into your sprite, your test sprite dot sprite, change the material name to default game, and you need to go in, or you need to create a new material called default game dot material, and basically just copy the other material, and right here under shader put default game shader, and that will fix those issues. I don't think I had to change anything in there. I had to change several things because I was trying to figure out what was going on, because after I fixed it, then those scaling issues came back up, and I just could not figure out why in the world I was having those scaling issues again. Yeah, I don't think I changed anything else. But now when we run this, you will actually see it doing what it's supposed to do. So I've got it scaled up 2 right now. So let's go 4. And scaling is correct. Now right now the anchor is at the bottom left because it's at 0, 0. So we can put it at the top right. So that'll offset that. That will offset that. Now we're rotating in counterclockwise. So the eyes should be up here, and the more empty space will be over here, and it will be right above it. So let's rotate 90 degrees. And there it is, rotating around its pivot. So that's pretty cool. If I did miss something, make sure you let me know in the comments, and I will figure out what exactly I missed here. All right, so God, we're already 28 minutes in. That took a lot longer than what I was hoping for. All right, so in here we're going to create a new script in Engine. It's going to be a new class, and we're going to call this asset database. And with this importing crap issue that we had right here with all this nonsense and whatever, thank God that's what this is going to get rid of, is no more of this crap. And that's what was screwing me over, is I was expecting immediate importing. Alright, so in here, this class is going to be a static class. It's going to allow us to basically just do whatever, or import whatever. I may add a few other things in here that we may do in the future, but I don't know. We'll see. I gotta fly through this because we're just eating time. So we're gonna start out by using a static class of type asset database. And then we're going to call it class, and it's going to be equal to asset. Yeah. I could just do this, but whatever. Asset database dot class. And that will cache the class that we're currently using. And then we need a private static class loader, say CL equals class dot get class loader. And that will get the class loader for this class. So now we need a few things. We need to have a list of strings for each individual asset type. It's going to equal to a new array list of string. And this importing crap. We'll do a lot of copy and pasting so we can hurry up and get this crap moving. Util. I always forget which one. Alright, so copy. Need to paste it 6 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's all the ones we need. So it's going to be textures and then fonts. After fonts, we're going to do shaders. After shaders, do materials. After materials, do skins. After skins, do... Actually, no. I want to put this in order. Do sprites and then skins. Because I think this is the exact order that we're going to be using anyways. You know what? I'm not going to add that extra stuff. I was going to put the scene stuff in there, but we're not that far anyways, and it's going to be a while, so whatever. So public static void load all. No, load all resources. So this will be a static method that we can call that will load all the resources in the project. Yeah, I could just create it here because it's only going to be called once anyways. So we're going to say int I equals 1. And then what we need to do is call init resource paths. And that's a function that we're going to be using here in just a second. And then after we init the resource paths, we are basically just going to loop through these and instantiate them all. Then so it's going to be textures. I'm just going to call new texture textures.getI. So it's pretty simple. Pretty self-explanatory. That. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we need 6 of them. Alright, so fonts. And then shaders. Gotta make sure I put these in the correct order. They have to be in this order. Do not deviate from this order. Because if you deviate from this order, you are going to get some errors. Oh, why do I keep on wanting to put skins first? Sprites. And then skins. It's going to be fonts.getI, shaders.getI, materials.getI, sprites.getI, and skins. Now, instead of a new texture, this will be new font. A new shader, new material, new sprite, not sprites, and a new skin. And there's going to be some extra stuff that we're also going to have to deal with this as well. So font. Yeah, import GUI.font. It's going to cache this out at 16. Later on we'll add some stuff so that we can change that. Oh, GUI skin. So that we can change the initial size of these fonts. Okay. So that takes care of that. Now we need call it private static void init resource paths. Now this one is going to be a fun one. I say fun, but it can be a turd. Alright, we're going to be using a URL, and it's going to be dir URL. It's kind of a normal one people use. Just standing for the resource directory URL. And it's going to be get resource engine. Am I using .NET or doc flavor? Oh, it ain't doc flavor. JavaNet. There we go. Now we need to get the protocol. So string protocol equals dir URL dot get protocol. And that gets the protocol for the directory. And what this is going to allow us to do is check to see if we're inside of the IDE or if we're inside of the jar. And this is important because they both import differently. So we're going to say if dir URL does not equal null. So if we have a directory URL and protocol dot equals, believe it's lowercase, equals file. Then what we're going to do is we're going to import from a directory. If not, what we're going to do is we're going to import from jar, and then we're going to pass in the directory URL. And then that is it for this method. This method is going to separate it because there's actually 3 different ways. Importing assets from within the IDE, which later will have external directory files. Importing assets from the jar and assets from external directory, and then final, the game build, which is completely not doing anything with external files and only importing from the jar. So that's why everything has to be separated that way, because there's tons of different ways to import all this stuff. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to do private static void import from directory. Yes, import from directory. And this is where we're going to separate later on down the road what is from the directory inside of the IDE or an external directory. So whether it's internal or external, but right now we're only worried about internal. So we're going to say textures equals import from local directory. And say textures and then 1, which we're going to be using booleans right here. Textures, we need to know the file extension, because it could be a PNG, could be a JPG, it could be whatever. So we need to, inside of this method, we're going to have a boolean type, but it's going to be let's use like an integer or whatever to determine whether it's true or false. And let's cheat again because I want to speed this up. Do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got textures, fonts, shaders, materials, sprites, skins. This will be textures, font, shaders, materials, skins, and why do I keep on wanting to put skins right there? Sprites and skins. And if you don't already know, this is the parameter for the folder path name. So once again, font does not have an S on it, so it's just font, not fonts. I probably need to change that myself later, just so that I can actually stop saying that. So private static list string import from local directory, and it's going to take in string path and int use extension. And why did I? Oh, because I never changed them. All the rest of these are going to be zeros because we don't need the file extension because it's a mono extension, never changes. All right. So the first thing we need in here is we need a list. Come on. List of string called pass, which equals new array list of string. And from here, we need an input stream n, which is going to be equal to cl dot get. I believe we're just using, yeah, resource as stream. And then we're going to pass in the path. And then we need to import input stream. And under that, we're going to say buffered reader br equals new buffered reader new input stream, and then pass in n. Cannot instantiate input stream. Really? You're gonna be stupid. Oh, because I need an input stream reader, not an input stream. Duh. Then import that. Let's get a line going on for reading. Now what we need to do is we need to read this in. So let's do while line equals br dot read line does not equal null. So basically, while the line does not equal null. I do need to separate that because I need to check if we have an extension going on. So if use extension equals 1, so if we need to use the extension, then we just call pass.add line. Else paths.add line.split, and then we're going to, wrong direction, we're going to split it at the period. And then it's going to be the very first element in that, so we can strip out the, what are you complaining about? Stupid try catch. Clean that up. There. All right, so that cleans that up a little bit. All right. What else do we need to do? Yeah, of course we need to close the stream. That'd be smart. So then, right after this, we need to close the stream. And I believe it's going to make us do, yes, another try catch. Because why not? There. And then here we will return paths. So then that cleans up a lot of messages we have up there. So now the next thing we need to do is importing from a jar. So down here, let's go private static void import from jar. I passed in the directory. We'll just call it the same name. Alright, now we need string me equals class dot get name dot replace the periods right? I'm doing something wrong. I think that was just throwing me off. Alright, replace the periods with slashes, because inside of the jar, that needs to be switched around, and that's what makes it different whenever you're importing, is the dots and the slashes are replaced. So then we're going to throw plus dot class at the end of that, and that's going to be our class name. So then dir URL equals cl.get resource, and then pass in me. Now we're at the very end of it. So if dir URL.get protocol dot equals jar, so then we know for a fact that we are, and why do I keep doing that? Then we know for a fact that we're as a jar. If not, it will just skip over it. It should never return anything else, but you know. So now we need the jar path, which is dir URL.get path dot substring int 5 dir URL.get path dot index of, and the character that we're looking for is exclamation mark. So then that gets the directory path for the jar. We're not going to be opening up any jar files or any of that crap. Some people do some really retarded stuff in order to access files. We're not doing any of that. That's dumb stuff. Don't even listen to that. So new jar file, URL decoder dot, oh okay, there we go, there's the helper, and pass in jar path and UTF-8. To import jar files. Let's just add throw, let's just add throws. All right, down below it, we need an enumeration jar, which is a jar entry. So enumeration jar entry. Entries equals jar dot entries. Import jar entry. Import enumeration. And this is going to allow us to iterate through the jar entries. So while entries dot has more elements. So while we have not reached the end yet, we're going to say string name equals entries dot next element dot get name. So if name dot ends with a slash, so if it's not, so if the name ends in a slash, then it's a folder. If it doesn't end in a slash, then it's a file. And how this works is whenever it's inside of a jar, all your resources is piled into the jar, basically in the, there's like a default directory or whatever. Well, whenever you're iterating through the elements, it's going to iterate through everything in that jar. That's the downfall about jars, is you have to iterate through all these elements to find whatever you're looking for, which is kind of a pain, but it has to be done if you're looking for elements that are inside of it. So if name dot starts with textures, then we know it's a texture. Come on, you. What in the world am I doing? Then I need to call textures.add name.split. And I'm going to split it at the slash and then the first element in that slash. Yeah. And then that's going to pass in the extension. Now, all the rest of them, we don't need that extension. So what we're going to be doing is saying else if name dot starts with, we'll start out with font. So then we know that it's font. And say fonts, no, yes, I did put an S. Fonts dot add name dot split. We're going to split it at the dash like we did above. And it's going to be the first element. But we also need to split it again at the period. And after that, it will be the first element to strip out that additional piece. So then 1, 2, what the hell? Oh, I'm not putting these at the end. Just wonder what was going on. There. 4, 5. I need 6. Right, no, because of textures. Okay, so it's going to be textures, font, materials, shaders, sprites, skins. This will be skins.add, sprites.add, shaders.add, materials.add, and that's already got fonts. And then after all this, we need to close the jar. So I mean, it does open it up, but we're not changing anything, replacing anything, none of that extra crap that other people do. So fix all this crap. I just hate dealing with all this. And it looks disgusting. And close that off. Alright, there we go. And that should do everything we need it to do. So before the application actually initializes, before we create everything, because eventually we're going to need to know what kind of application build it is, whether it's no build, as in running through the IDE, or an engine build or a game build. And our asset database is going to be exactly what tells us what is what later on down the road. And right now it does kind of tell us what is what, whether it's a jar or IDE. We're just going to have to add in that extra element to find out whether it's a game build or not later on. So right here, we're just going to say asset database dot load all resources. And that's going to automatically load everything that we need. So to test this out, let's say sprite s equals sprite dot get test sprite. That's capital S or capital T. And let's throw that out too. Let's comment that away. And that should do it. The only reason why I have it commented out currently is just in case something like this happens. We'll abort execution. Alright, we'll do it again. Still same thing. Alright, give me just a moment and I will look and see what's going on. Alright, I found the mistake and it was super simple. It was because of this. That's it. That was my issue. It's because I was loading the resources before application.init, which uh, which we're gonna have to in the future. I mean, we don't necessarily have to, but it would be a plus. Uh, yeah, you know what? We'll just never do it before. We'll do some of it after. And then we'll just set it and make sure that it can't be set again or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. All right. So all this stuff is commented. I'm no longer importing default GUI.png. No SMW pot tiles or any of this stuff. So when I run it, even though I'm no longer statically importing it, it's all dynamic. So there it is. Everything is loading and loading properly. So just to be on the safe side, apparently I still have a thing in there from whenever I was debugging. Going to export runnable jar. Next. No. Logic. Logic. Yes. To overwrite it. Jar creation fit. Come on. Why is my computer being such a ding dong? And I figured out well, not really figured it out, but the command line issue I was having last time in the last video. I don't know why it wasn't working before. Like, I thought I typed it right, but apparently I misspelled something somewhere. And as soon as I turned it off, I'm like, man, what is going on? So I went back to it, and yeah, it worked perfectly fine the very first time. So yeah, I don't know what was going on. So java dash jar. It's on my desktop slash logic.jar. And pow, that is running from the jar file. Apparently I'm having some issues with creating font though. And see, that's what's good about running it from command prompt is you get these messages. If you just click on it, then you're not going to get uh, these these messages. And I'll just figure it out, and at the beginning of the next video, we'll fix it really quick. But as you can see, everything is uh, going how it's supposed to be and running good and smooth. All right, well, in the next video, we will add the project panel. So we'll be able to click on stuff and manipulate some of the import settings. The import settings aren't going to stay just yet because we haven't gotten into writing files and all that, but we will get there. But we'll at least be able to click on it and change it for the current session or whatever. And that will also allow us to change scenes once we get into creating new scenes and saving scenes and loading scenes. which we will be getting onto here in the next couple episodes. That way we can get into play mode, runtime stuff. So I will see you next episode where we create the project panel. So have a good week, and I hope I didn't confuse you too much. All right, bye.